Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today is definitely a topic that I don't think I've ever really talked about before, but it's something that's been on my mind lately, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Today, I want to talk about 5 decks, 5 strategies that no one plays. Literally, I don't see anybody playing these except for like maybe 1 or 2 people here or there. Nobody plays these decks, and I think they're actually relatively good right now. And now when I say good is definitely a subjective term. That could mean a lot of different things. What I really mean when I say good in the context of this video is I actually think they have some sort of rogue potential. I think these decks can do things. I don't think they'll necessarily climb to the top of the meta, but I think the decks I'm going to talk about in today's video are very rogue status decks that have potential to do certain things. I'm going to explain what those things are that I think they'll be able to do that might impact the meta in a certain way. With that being said, guys, hopefully you enjoy the ride. Definitely a different type of video, but if you are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell to miss a video. And if you guys do want to see some more meta decks, I've posted both a Turles and a Mecha Frieza deck. Those are 2 decks that I think are very, very competitive going into set 12. I've tuned and tweaked them for weeks and weeks and weeks now, so I've become very comfortable with them and shared them with the community on the Patreon, so check that out if you're interested. But that being said, let's get started with deck number 1. So Black Buu, Majin Buu is a deck I've been thinking about for quite some time for several reasons. So the first of which being, we know that in set 11, the meta is very much dominated by aggro. Of course, you had the trio of Reboot Gohan, Vegex, and Red Broly just kind of like wreaking havoc on the meta. And of course, mid-range control, they're also playable as well. They also top. But this being a more recent aggro deck, came out in set 9, that's one of the reasons why I've come back to this leader. Of course, it's very interesting. You know, it plays a lot of the game with no hand, and then the leader can also very easily refuel your hand after your turn's over. Now, keep in mind, too, you can actually also play the majority of the strategy with the Vegex leader as well. Vegex Buu is something that has topped in set 10. I don't think there was any Vegex Buu that really did much in set 11 meta, but set 10, that was a deck that topped. This deck did some things in the set 9 meta, more so along the time of like Tournament of Power back in February of 2020. So it is a deck that's done some things, hasn't really been seen so much lately, but let's pretty much go into why I think this deck can do some things. So keeping in mind, you can play with 2 different leaders. We have Hatchiac, Vengeful Agent of Destruction. So a lot of what the Buu strategy type wants to do is really just lean into this 1-drop Bobbity that, you know, basically pitches a card, lets you start your Buu chain. So the Hatchiac is an added consistency factor that came out in Anniversary Box 2020 that basically says, you know, pay 1, pitch this card, and it's basically a copy of Bobbity from either your deck or your drop area. And being from the drop area, that's one of the most important things about this card, because in set 9, when Buu came out for the most part, you had your 4 Bobbities, and if you went through them throughout the course of the game, like if you had to discard them when you didn't want to, or mill them and things like that, that was it. You didn't have any more Bobbities, and it was really hard to restart your chain without that efficient energy source, because again, it does it for 1 energy, which is so good. So having Hatchiac in the deck, you're able to recur those Bobbities from the drop, and you can just keep your plays going. It's basically a revival card in that sense that revives your Buu chain after something removes it, but it also gets your chain started. So it serves both purposes, which I think is so good. And then you come to the boss monsters of Buu, which you have Majin Buu Supreme Evil and Majin Buu Diabolic Punisher. Both these cards are actually better, in my opinion, in this meta and the meta we're moving into than they were in set 9. Let me explain. So Majin Buu Supreme Evil, this card can't be removed from battle area by your opponent's skills, and when this card's in rest mode, your opponent cannot use non-leader card skills to add cards from their deck to their hand. So we're seeing another similar engine in the format right now, or at least, possibly going into set 12 format, with the yellow slug engine from Draft Box 6. Some Mecha Frieza builds, mine included, are playing that engine. I think it's super good, especially because back then in set 9, keep in mind that a lot of decks didn't play draw super combos. That set was when Zamasu super combo came out, Android 18 super combo came out, even the red yellow Whis super combo saw a lot of play. So with that in mind, a lot of people weren't playing draw super combos. That made this Buu lose a lot of value because there weren't as many cards that were just adding cards to hand, inherently. Nowadays, a lot more people play draw super combos, so this card picks up a lot more value, plus the protection, of course, is very, very nice. But that's also where the aggro comes from in this deck. Keep in mind that with that Bobbity I was talking about, you go into a 2-drop 15k Buu, attack with that. You can go into a 4-drop dual attacker after that. After that, 25k crit. After that, 25k double striker. And then you end on one of these 6-drops. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're more new to the game, you got to go and read the Black Buu stuff, because I can't go over the entire deck in this video. Otherwise, it'd be a video just about this one deck. But that's basically what this deck does. After all those attacks, you end on one of these 6-drops. Diabolical Punisher is another great card because it says auto Place a card in the owner's drop area as the cost. When your opponent plays a battle card with an energy cost greater than the current energy, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and send it to the owner's warp. So this is very much similar to Max Power Kamehameha, which we know is a very strong card in the meta right now in main decks and side decks. Buu basically has an inherent Max Power Kamehameha. Now, it is kind of unfortunate that you have to give up your Buu chain in order to do that, but like I said, Hatchiac being a card now, your chain is very easily recurable for 1 energy, which anything for 1 energy is excellent for an aggro deck. So that's something to keep in mind there. If you are playing up against like Red Broly, you have some really good interruption here. You know, warp their 5-drop, warp their 4-drop, whatever the case is, and then you can go back into your chain the next turn with Agent of Destruction, which is definitely solid. But one more thing about Buu that I want to talk about, you have the ability to play Sun Goten Chaining History. This card came out in Draft Box 6, and it's basically a retrained, watered down version of Turles the Unstoppable Ghost Warrior, which was an absolutely excellent card in Black Buu back in set 9 before that card got banned. They basically printed this card, and it does a very similar thing, but it's an overwhelm as opposed to an activate main play. So of course, you know, this card goes away at the end of the turn, which is definitely more than fair. But this card can replace Turles nicely in Buu. So the way I envision it in my mind is that you go through your Buu chain, so you're pulling your Buu pieces out of the drop area. They all pretty much stay on the board because they are under a stack, basically an evolution stack, right? So you can overwhelm the rest of your drop that you don't really care about, play Goten, attack, activate battle, play Beerus Godly Majesty. Beerus Godly Majesty has amazing synergy in Buu because the 1-drop Bobby requires you to discard cards, and then you can play Chaining History Goten, which also discards a card, both of which allow you to play Beerus Godly Majesty. So I think that's a really good synergy there. And then Protect of the People. This card was not out when Black Buu was first released. So, you know, Black didn't really have one of its best negates at that time to kind of toy around with. So Buu, again, for example, you play with very little cards in hand. You can play with 0 cards in hand. So using Protect of the People to pitch a piece of the Buu chain or just pitch anything in general, really, and then constantly gain 5k, that's gonna help a deck that doesn't always have a ton of combo power in hand. So these factors considered, I think Buu does have a shot to do some roguish things this meta, something I definitely want to tinker with. Next up, we have OG Toa. So of course, Toa out of the Ultimate deck is something that's got a lot of people's attention right now, and for good reason. That deck seems very, very powerful, but for some reason, and I'll explain those reasons, my mind keeps coming back to OG Toa. Let me explain why. So this deck has a chain it goes through. We know chains are very powerful in Dragon Ball Super right now. Maybe not so much older chains, but this one, hear me out. This one is a chain that very much leans into the flex. So Mira Faithful Servant is a card that came out in set 10. Basically, you could play it for free at any point as long as you don't have any battle cards in play, which in an overwhelm centric deck, that's not that hard to meet that requirement. Then you can pay 3 to go into your 5-drop Mira. Back when this deck was actually a tier 1 deck, you had to wait till turn 4 to start going into your Mira because your 5-drop Mira would reduce its cost by 1, only by 1, when you had X amount of cards in your warp. So this guy comes down as early as turn 1, 2, 3, and then you pay 3, play the 5-drop. As long as you have a Toa in your warp, you can go into Creator Absorbed as early as turn 3, and you can start ripping your opponent's hand apart, and you can repeat turn 4, repeat turn 5, do that kind of thing. What I really like about this is that it's very, very safe against certain counterplays, especially against Blue. It's very hard to pick a deck right now and say, yeah, my deck is safe against Godsling Technique Trunks. The only decks that are color really that generally has that type of thing is green. They've got a lot of deflect battle cards over the last few sets, but this color is very, very safe to Godsling Technique Trunks. Not so safe to Frieza Charismatic Villain, but you know, you can kind of play a grindier game with green, hopefully, and see where that goes. That's one of the reasons why I don't think this thing will climb to the top of the meta, but it is a really cool interaction with Blue. More stuff you can do in Toa. So SS4 Vegeta Supreme Saiyan Power. This card is interesting. Black Unisons generally aren't all that great because they're very, very small in power, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to meet their plussing conditions and minus conditions. And S4 Vegeta is no different, but in Toa, you should theoretically be overwhelming every single turn. So playing this guy turn 1 and maybe playing like a Relentless Destruction Mira should work out pretty well for you in terms of plussing this guy's markers. And then you can maybe -5 to win the game if your opponent's at that 1 life. But besides that, he has an auto that's very much akin to Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. Maybe it's just overall better to just play BMS in this deck rather than wasting your time with this Unison. That's totally a possibility. Just an idea that popped in my head. This is pretty much like a stream of consciousness video, so keep that in mind. And I still think Vegeta Time Regulator is a pretty solid turn 2 play, especially like I said, if you're going to overwhelm every single turn, like why not, right? If you go first, this guy should be safe from almost all counterplays except for like the turn 1 Demigod that the occasional green deck might play, right? So just with those things in mind, I think Toa can do some cool stuff, especially against Blue, where a lot of decks can't really say they're safe against Godsling Technique Trunks. Next up, guys, we have red blue something. So this here is a lot less strict than the other stuff I've been going over. I'm more so talking about the blue red engine here than anything else. So one of the big problems with multicolor in the modern day of Dragon Ball Super is that there are a lot of 10k combos in any given multicolor strategy, and it's really weird to mesh that with unisons. Unisons are incredibly powerful, one of the reasons being because of the counter attacks they come with and the counter plays they come with. So meshing unisons, which you can't combo with, in a deck with a ton of 10k combos, you're asking for clunk. You're asking to not be able to live when your opponent all-ins you, right? So red blue is the only real multicolored deck that can inherently get around that because of Beerus Divine Obliterator, which untaps your red blue energy when you combo it defensively. Cooler Technical Assault, just an excellent card overall. Very strong, cheap double striker that gives you some removal on small guys. Stack several coolers into one arrival, you'll be removing a lot of big guys. And then Xenocosmic Unison, if you happen to be playing a blue leader, you can play blue or red leaders with this strategy. If you're playing a blue leader, you get a really powerful unison that can, you know, ideally let you play strong guys like turn 4 guys. On turn 3 you can tap out for those and you're safe tapping out because of Beerus Divine Obliterator. So what kind of leaders can you look at to play with this? Well, Launch is one that I've seen both my friends and my teammates play. I've seen successful builds of Launch in both blue red and green red, and I think they both look very solid. You know, Marcus has been playing red green Launch if you've been checking out his channel or his streams, and one of my friends has been playing blue red Launch, and it does seem pretty solid. Launch being a leader very similar to Hercule in the sense of they take advantage of you comboing. They draw cards when you combo, so you don't feel bad using Divine Obliterator at any point in the game. You use it, you draw one like it's a normal super combo, you untap, you play your stuff. And Hercule too, man. Like, if Launch has potential, it really feels like Hercule has potential. That 3 draw awaken is very solid. That awakening turn where you have a card in your combo area, you draw 1 with the activate battle on the unawakened side, you awaken, draw 3, and then without even spending another card, you can activate battle again on your awakened side because there is a card in your combo area still, so you can do it like that. So I think both those leaders have potential with a very combo heavy strategy like red blue probably is. And then you have like just different blue leaders. Like, you really can't play Soul Striker with this because you more so rely on mono blue energy, but maybe like Vegito, maybe some old school blue leader could work with this. I think that's really an interesting thing to look at if you want to play with like Xenocosmic Unison. But you might not even need unisons in this deck, to be honest. In red blue you might have enough interruption where you don't need God Sealing, but if you want God Sealing, you might want to look at a blue leader or play a red leader with a blue unison that's not specific to blue leaders, right? Next up, guys, I know that my teammate Trey, if he watches this video, he's gonna cry a little bit, and I know if Brian Samuel watches this video, he's gonna be like, oh, please don't talk about Trunks. But Trunks was a deck that caught a little bit of hype over the past few weeks because getting a new unison in TP12. Now, this isn't really talking about that and that whole strategy, because if you play that Tapion Unison, it seems like you have to more so play like a Trunks spam deck, which could be fine, could be good. But the reason I always come back to Trunks is because of Vegito Paralyzing Prowess. It's the closest thing we have to Gogeta 7 in the game. Not at all that I'm saying I want Gogeta 7 back. That's the last thing I want for the game. But in terms of like a powerful boss monster with both Barrier and Deflect, Vegito Paralyzing Prowess is really the closest thing we have, and his summoning conditions really aren't all that hard. Like, we know that in blue we can ramp with Xenocosmic Unison, right? So that's a way to do it on turn 3. But you also have access to Baby Unknown Parasite on turn 2 if you can ramp correctly through your life, which is another very powerful interaction. The other thing too is Son Goku Hit Supreme Alliance is absolutely incredible in this deck. I mean, we know this card is good in blue decks already, but basically Zamasu Super Combo, arrive this guy, block or attack, and he's fusion fodder for your Vegito that gets you into Paralyzing Prowess. So some really good synergy there. Trunks is very interesting. The leader also having inherent removal, I'm a very big fan of. So it's something I always come back to and think that, wow, this could maybe do something roguish in this meta. Next up, this one is going to be the biggest stretch for me, but this one I want to talk about Hatchiac. So Hatch is one that I've come back to because of how aggro the meta is, right? And there's some give and take with that. This leader seems like he could do very well against Vegex and Red Broly. They both, you know, well, I guess Red Broly doesn't really go wide on the board, but he does attack multiple times with different battle cards as you're going up the chain, so this leader works all the same. Vegex, though, Vegex is seemingly not going to be as powerful as we go into set 12 via the ban list, so that is not really a factor you may need to consider. But against, you know, go wide decks in general, which set 12 has a lot of, Hatchiac can definitely do some things. The one place, or two places I guess, where Hatchiac is going to struggle is against Reboot Gohan, because it's a leader centric deck. This guy doesn't really restrict your opponent's leader swing at all. and also unison-centric decks, which another point for Red Broly. Their unison doesn't really do a lot of damage himself in terms of attacking, so that's a cool thing there against Red Broly. So this might be like maybe an anti-Red Broly deck, but in other scenarios, this guy's not going to be great in every matchup because, again, of those unison decks and Reboot Gohan. But his battle cards really interest me. Hatchiac, Fueled by Hatred, is a card that's safe from Charismatic Villain, which is, of course, one of the counterplays you have to check your battle cards against when deciding if they're good enough or not to compete, basically. And then you have Hatchiac, Mad with Hate, which is actually a card that I never really got to see play. And don't get me wrong, Hatchiac, for me at least, one of the more annoying decks to play against, but it kind of sucks that a new boss monster basically came out for them and they really haven't gotten to reap the benefits of that. So I think maybe this guy could be an anti-meta pick, but I guess it kind of depends how the meta shapes up. Like, if less people play Reboot Gohan, more people play Vegex, more people play Red Broly, and then some of these set 12 decks that go wide end up doing some stuff, I think Hatch could possibly be revisited and do some interesting things in a rogue status. But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Again, basically a stream of consciousness. I think we talked about some interesting stuff today. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.